All right, it's 6:31. I'll bring the meeting to order. First up, modifications and changes to tonight's agenda.
Just under executive, there's a couple personnel things we need to add to that as well. That's something I have.
Hearing none others, I'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody here from the public tonight? No? Okay. Moving on to review and approval for minutes of April 26, 2022 and the joint meeting on May 2nd. If everyone had a chance to look those over and didn't see any errors, I will hear a motion to accept them.
I'll move. I'll second.
Eli had the first, Andy with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. That's unanimous. Next item, Enisburg Falls High School graduation parade.
So there was change of plans. The high school is looking to have their parade. They have provided, as they did last year, the parade route, and if you look on the second page, Lions Club, and there will be 3 officers from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office on for traffic control, and Maggie is also on if you guys have any further questions.
Good evening, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
Is it going to be about the same route that you had last year?
Yeah, it's the Lions Club route, like the Dairy Days parade route.
Yeah, starts at the elementary school, goes up through, comes back down.
Worked out last year, I don't
Yes,
see
it
an
did.
issue with it.
I don't have a problem with it. Yep, fine with that. We need a vote?
I think we did a motion last year.
Yeah, a motion would be safe, just
I
to
move we approve the
approve
graduation
the
parade.
request.
Second.
Danny with the first, Eli with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Painless.
And they have, they've got all kinds of protocol covered, so they'll be fine. And this will be the principal's parade as well.
Francis
Oh,
last year.
that's
Yeah,
right.
he's retiring and I'm sure they'll probably have him in a vehicle so he can do the Miss Vermont wave too. But I'm missing it. I've told him I'm gonna lock his apartment door from the outside.
Well, thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Maggie.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next up,
Good evening, all.
You
Me
too.
welcome signs. Dave Trihorn. Good evening.
So, we've been looking for a location for the welcome signs on the West Berkshire Road. And we have, along with Jesse, and found a pretty good place up at Jackson's. And we both contacted the Jacksons, and
Jeff or Carol?
Jeff.
Okay.
And they are in favor, but they have a couple or 3 requests. The first one is they'd like a statement, they'd like a signed statement from someone at the village. That would basically say that the village has no right to the property that the sign would be placed on. The second item is that at their will, they would like to have the sign taken down if it was necessary. And they added a statement saying that's probably not the case, but they just wanted that to cover themselves. The third thing is they want to be present at the installation. So I guess my question is it possible to get a signed statement from you folks?
Who would maintain it if we wouldn't have any right to the property? Who would
Right.
mow
I
around it
don't-
and stuff?
I don't think they're saying we don't have the right to maintain it. We'd have to clear that up, but I mean, that's.
Yeah, because we'll have to go on the
I
property to
think,
maintain.
I mentioned this to Dave, but if we're putting village property essentially onto private property, I think the village also needs to look into having an easement or right of way to that. So if the property owners down the road sell their land, then
Right.
we're not having to force it, and to kind of cover our bases here, I think the village needs to do an easement with any of the private landowners that we're putting these signs on.
I don't think an easement will work in this case. They seem to be very protective of their property. So if you do an easement, they're giving up their property, so.
Got a little history there, because they had a little problems, but.
Yeah, I do know that, yeah.
Okay.
So, and if we do easements, you're gonna have to with some lawyers, I guess,
Yeah, there'd be some costs associated with that.
figure that out.
Do you think there will be an issue with someone going on the property on a could-be regular basis to maintain the sign?
I think we could put that in the statement.
Okay.
Right, that would be a question for them, I think. Because by the
Because
sounds.
who knows if the paint peels or the vinyl comes off or the whatever.
Right,
I-
I mean,
Or mow around it.
I really
Yeah,
hate,
mowing.
I really hate to see this thing get into the easement situation. It's gonna be costly.
I understand that, but from the village's standpoint, we also kind of have to be protected with our property, so I mean, it's the trustees' decision at the end of the day, but if they sell their property, then the new owner could not let us on or to do anything with that sign, essentially, so just have to think long-term with this as well.
There could be insurance ramifications of some kind as well.
Is
If
it
somebody
the
goes
only,
off the road and wails that sign and the post goes through the windshield, and
is it the only place for that sign?
probably is.
Well, are we talking about only that place? or-
Just that place right there? Yeah. Is it like the only option?
It is a very short piece of road between the town line, actually, and the village.
what do you mean? on
One
that?
oh eight.
Yeah, I don't,
108 though, it would be, that's all village.
I don't feel any
Yeah,
further
as soon as
ahead.
it
That's all
as
village,
soon as
so
we're
like
sure.
from Pothiers down to all.
But I mean, having a place to put a sign.
Oh, right, yeah, there's not a lot of, because you've got the problem with the, I don't wanna say problem, but you've got the issue of the Lions Club wanting to keep their sign is up at actually in Berkshire
Okay.
on, well, now Stebbins land, right on the Stebbins Pothier border, so you've got, and then you kind of, as you head down the hill there was some kind of unused land, there were in between Stanley's old farm and Jackson's driveway, and that's when Dave and I went out there and drove, and it was kind of perfect because it's a little wet there, to be honest with you, so it was kind of a, you know, it wasn't like we were putting it in the field or a pasture or anything like that, so that's why, well, like Gary had said, there was some previous incidences where it made the Jacksons just nervous to have another, you know, another possible incident, so.
There is an alternative. We could, again, cut the number back to 3 and just forget about the West Berkshire Road. So we can move the program along.
What if you just had the fourth sign made and just not put up until we get all this straightened out?
We could do that too.
I think that may be an option for now. If I had to guess, I'd say us and the Jacksons are probably on the same page, but there's just some details that we have to
So
clean
I
up.
think so. I don't see any reason why it can't be straightened out.
I think it's got something.
What?
I've been involved with some of the historical markers. There, the state owns the sign and puts it in the right of way. They're then responsible for its care. The landowner doesn't have anything to do other than to say they own it. I don't know if that would.
We can't put it in the state's right away. I contacted,
Okay.
AOT, District 8, most of the right-of-ways are 24 foot 9 inches,
Yeah.
so we have to be outside that 24 foot 9 inch right-of-way with them.
So they're not letting us put it
They won't let us yet,
Okay.
yeah.
So we were doing it by the health center,
Health center.
and that's a 50-foot.
That's 55 right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually some signs in there right away.
Yeah, where were we?
So let me say, so if we can agree on a statement, if you folks can do a statement and they agree to it, will that work?
Yeah, I don't have any issues with any of their requests. I would just like to clear up that no right to the property thing. Because if,
They didn't say that. They didn't say that there's no right to the property. They just say they didn't, basically what they're saying is they still own the land. They don't
oh
want,
yeah,
they don't want the village to assume that the village owns that land because they put a sign.
yeah, no, absolutely.
No,
We
I don't
would
think
just-
we're gonna
we
do
would
any
own-
eminent domain.
Right.
Yeah,
But I do think what Abby's saying about in terms of like if they were to sell their property, like there needs to be some sort of language and something, whether it's an easement or something different, which I don't know if there's something different, so that the sign can still be there and you would still have access if somebody else
Right,
was
even
on
if
that
it's
property.
under ownership.
I don't necessarily know if, I kinda agree with Dave on this, that it needs to be a legally binding thing. I mean, it's just a sign, worst case scenario,
We move it.
we just pull it up. And
Okay, so
either that, or it
pick
could be
it up.
something as simple as approach the new landowner and have a conversation with, like, look, this was the previous deal, we have it all in writing. We can just scratch out Jackson's name and write whoever lives there,
Exactly.
sign it away, and we're good to go, so.
Exactly.
Maybe I think the best thing, would they have any interest of drafting something that they would like to see? They could just have us review it.
I'll ask them.
That way we know exactly what their requests
Yeah,
are.
make them happy this way.
And then, I guess for now, we'll stay with the 4 signs, and then, once this is good, then
Okay,
we'll set up that 4.
okay, one more question, did you see the one, Evan? It's coming.
Okay.
I talked to Richard today, it is coming,
Perfect.
and so now can we go forward, give John a purchase order, or whatever we do for buying?
Or if, as long as the board's comfortable that we budgeted 4,200 or 4,300 for it, and then the remaining sums for the 4th sign are coming to us as form of, we're gonna call it a grant essentially. So if, as long as the trustees are okay with that, I can pull a PO tomorrow and get that rolling.
So that's good going.
Let's get it done.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, vital village discussion, Enisburg initiative in Greater Brunswick.
Greta is going to attempt to log in or stop in. She had another meeting this evening at 6 o'clock, so she's gonna try to get here for 7, but we're gonna start without her. I'm sure Jim can kind of help fill in the details of it too.
I can help, I think we all can help, but you were sent something by, from Greta, folks? So I can do the setup, and then when Greta comes or goes or whatever, we decide where we want to go from that. About 4 years ago, the village and the town, at a joint meeting, at the suggestion or request of a bunch of folks in the room, and many who aren't here, to start pursuing a plan to look at how the downtown worked from a pedestrian, traffic, beautification, circulation, park perspective, to look at that. And there was a grant that was applied for jointly, and the town and the village paid their 20%, we got the grant, and that began what was Vital Village. Greta wrote that grant for the village at the Northwest Regional Planning staff level for that, and then from that went on a year plus of community meetings, planning, surveys, live visits back in the day, that generated an overall plan, some themes, some thoughts, what people thought about, cared about, and wanted to happen. Then we came back to the village, that group came back to the village again a year and a half ago, maybe longer, and wanted to engage us in the next step of that planning process. And that was brought to the trustees. There was again a grant that ran a 20% match. This time it was just for the village, I believe, though. The second round was just for the village. And that was in the first grant was in the 65 or 70,000 range. The second grant was in a $40,000 range, and you folks agreed to cover that if we got the grant. The grant was received, you approved it, and then that moved ahead. That moved it to the next phase. I guess it's phase 3 or phase 2. Phase 2, I guess, 2.5. Moved it to that level. There was options delivered to the community and options delivered to the trustees. There was a fairly long debate here, discussion debate about the pros and cons of each of the plans. And at the end of the night, I believe you all voted to, and when I say all, it was, I believe, unanimous, to move ahead with accepting, that's what it was. You had to accept that report from the engineer to move us to the next step. And there was some discussion about 2 of the variations. Some board members liked some and some didn't like others. And so the language was created, and Greta has put it in here as well, that those things will be worked out at the end, if you will, that there'll be a discussion, negotiation, decisions made by the trustees as to what the final plan might be. So I believe where we are now is shovel ready, getting this project shovel ready. So the next round of grants is due in June. It runs very, very similar in their context of 80-20. Greta, if you folks decide that you wanna move ahead with that, we'll put together the grant and present it to you, but she'll staff that grant along with another person in her office, I believe. And put that all together for you, answer all your questions, and would be looking for you folks, we would be looking for you folks to approve that next level. If we get that money, it would come out in the fall, and you would have, again, as with all these grants, I realize that was pretty, just a recitation, but keep in mind that whenever those grants become available, you can choose to not take it. You can say, wait a minute, we've done this or done that, and that is how we've asked you to proceed in the past. I would make the comment, jump aside for a second. If you remember, there was a conversation or discussion back in the late winter about the crosswalk at Dickinson Avenue. That was discussed, and you agreed to move ahead, and you didn't, I think many people in the room know, but we did get that grant. The grant was awarded to the village, and that had a 20% match, and that was donated to the village by the RISE program, and that money sits in the EFEDC bank account for that purpose, to help pay for that. You now have the opportunity to accept that grant or not, you know, if you wish to formally, assuming there's a letter or a document
Yeah,
somewhere
we
that
can go
has
ahead.
you doing that.
Jim had forwarded me that we received the funds, and Elizabeth sent me the letter that I sent to you.
Yeah, I can't explain, you know, why.
I have it, but maybe she will look at it.
Out of my hands. And then as well, for that grant, there were some discrepancies about what people thought, where they wanted the crosswalk closing, this and that. Again, that can come back now and be decided, and put in place as you want. And those funds are available till the end of '23 or fall of '23, to the best of my understanding. I'm
I believe we have to use the RISE funds by the end of June, so the engineering and everything the ball needs to get rolling rather quickly with this. The $2,000 RISE funds have to be used immediately, and then I believe you're correct, 2023 for the rest.
Right.
So we're gonna have to make some quick decisions on that.
Wasn't it our intention to use that 2,000 for signage?
To get the signage or
like,
the engineering.
Materials, yeah.
Yeah,
that way we
something we
spend
could
that
buy
right off.
up front and just store until we're ready to use.
Oh, then I'm not in that loop. I thought you were possibly referring to the money.
No, we got it, it's from RISE Vermont, it's a RISE grant we got for the $2,000. The money you're referring to, I believe, is coming for the signs, not for this project. There's two different projects.
No,
It has to be
for the
spent right
signs,
now.
that's what confused me.
Yeah, but the RISE money has to be spent, paperwork done, closed out by June 30th.
What he meant by signs was like crosswalk signage associated with that project.
Okay.
And like paint for the crosswalk, stuff like that, materials, stuff that we can use down the road. But we
Okay.
have to spend the money now.
Okay. Didn't know that. Believe you didn't know that. Do we have that, does that sitting in our account, or do you?
No, that's RISE, the check will be coming, I believe Amy said it's cut through UVM Medical Center, or UVM somewhere, and we should be getting those funds. I just sent them an invoice and finalized that we should be seeing the funds in the next, hopefully, couple weeks.
I would assume us being the recipient, all funds go directly.
It will come to us, the grant isn't the village's thing, it will come directly to
It
us.
shouldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah,
But Sam, no. I'm clear that I recollect that when Amy and I spoke about this a while ago, that she was gonna get it out of the door and get it into our account. That's fine, I don't care, I'm just,
Yeah.
that's why that's coming
we
up
ended
that
up
way.
filling, we filled out
There's
the
a miss
paperwork
here
and
for
it's
you
coming
that I had a
to us.
conversation with, and I thought it was flowing
I
a
think
certain
what
way.
you're referring to is at the beginning, she didn't know who the applicant for the funds was, at the beginning of the conversation.
June Cameron Inc., I think was the name of the applicant. No, okay, enough of that. So, now back to this. So we're at in some respects, the last stage. And then, I'm not sure, I think everybody has seen this on the board. Have you all seen this on the
It's
board?
in your
level?
packets.
So I would say to you folks or to others here, what comments or questions do you have about what's here? Otherwise, I'm just gonna paraphrase.
Yeah, no, so next phase is engineering phase, correct? And so-
Engineering and design and construction.
Yeah,
Okay, so that would require a 20% match on the total engineering, correct?
and construction.
And this is
It's-
doing
it's
the
both.
design
Yeah,
and
it's the whole thing.
construction, this is the whole thing.
Yep.
So that's, if I can cut in here, Greta reached out to Du Bois and King to update their original estimate numbers, so we're at about 1.5. The 20% match on that is gonna be ballpark $300,000 to $400,000. The trustees are gonna have to decide if they wanna go forward with
You're talking 1.5 million total?
for the whole project, for the design and the construction.
So there, it says here that there's only, it can be awarded up to 1 million.
Average
says average
project, no cap on how much you can apply for, but the average project is
Gotcha.
usually 300,000 to $1 million. And then 20% local match. So we're looking at, this estimate has us at $315,000 for what the local side, we'd have to pass on to the ratepayers.
So Abby, this is in today's funds, because one of the questions I had on this second page of the graph, or
Yep.
on the bottom, it says $2021.
That'll also have
This
to
was
change.
updated, so this was updated because the original one was only 1.1. Because I did go back and pull the original, they must not have just updated that, because these numbers have changed from what was initially presented to us, because I did double check that.
Yeah.
So this was just updated on May 5th, that actually says it up top.
So
Yeah.
that's a big pill to swallow. Is there any way that they can split that up into engineering and then construction? Because I feel like the bulk of the
Yeah,
The
I
cost-
really, I could speculate, but I don't know that answer, whereas Greta wouldn't know that answer factually.
Oh.
I'd rather not say something and mislead people.
How many years is this grant for?
It has to be completed, I believe, end of 2024.
and that's
or-
project completion or funds
Completion.
spent?
I believe it's completion. Again, Greta would have to verify that entirely.
I'll bring you back to the second star on the middle page, and it says typical project timeline is 3 to 5 years from start of design, which would be in the fall of October, to end of construction.
So they'd probably give us a 27, I would assume.
Might have to have it obligated, but project actually completed by a certain date. My question with this too, and this is kind of more for the trustees, is there's been a lot of conversations about if we're gonna be tearing up Main Street, essentially, water, sewer lines, there's been talk of power lines. I mean, we also need to factor all that in, so if we're gonna do Main Street, we're doing it once, and we have not done engineering studies on any of that, to my knowledge, have we, Gary?
No, it was,
For Main
we,
Street?
I don't know, I'm not sure about water or wastewater, but I know the power was struck
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the budget. Or,
Yes, 1.4
Yes.
doesn't include any of the construction, I mean, none of the storm or the water, this is just service stuff.
right, that would affect potentially three different departments as
You're
well.
talking another,
as
probably
well as
another,
general fund.
do that water and sewer, you're probably talking another $500,000. Think of the storm and the water.
Right.
The sewer's new, it was done back when the CSO was, but the storm drain was the old sewer, which is all 8-inch clay, which is all undersized, but if nothing, the catch basin on Main Street, because with a heavy rainstorm, they end up filling up and vortexing because they can't take the water fast.
And Greta did put a note in here that we could potentially get another grant if we apply for in the fall for the storm drain side of it, which their maximum award is $300,000 with a 20% match as well.
And that's engineering and construction.
I can't speak to that, unfortunately.
I'm gonna tell you with 80% accuracy, that's likely the case, and that's the way this.
I would assume so, how most of these
Basically
grants were.
said, we've helped you all, my interpretation is we've helped you this far, now you're ready to go, right? And so, the penalty, that's my opinion, just an assessment, but others may certainly disagree. Then you would be on, let's say, two paths here, you don't approve it, the other is you approve it, wait and see if you get it. If you get it, then, and decide to move ahead, your penalty will be, and then you decide not to build, or can't do it, or decide not, voters turn it down, whatever, if it goes that way, your liability is that, engineering work goes. You have to pay that, that's what this says, you have to pay that, but after that, there's no penalty, if you will, you're out of that.
Mike, or
I just wondered, is the match due when you get the grant money, or is it spread out over?
the way it typically works with some of the grants like this that we've had in the past is 5 invoices from whoever our engineer is. I submit the paperwork, say the total cost is $10,000 that I'm submitting for it. They will only reimburse 80% of that, so then we're paying every time that we're submitting for payment. So it's a continuous cycle coming out of the budget, the way that all the grants that I've worked with in the past with the state have been.
So they
So-
wouldn't, sorry, so they wouldn't allow us to like pick something that we would do as like our own portion of the project that village funds?
Not, so essentially, we're paying for everything up front, submitting for reimbursement, and they're on whatever we submit for reimbursement, say again, the $10,000, they're only gonna reimburse us $8,000, which is 20%. So it's a continuous cash flow game, because we're gonna be paying a huge amount up front, having to wait the cycle to get reimbursed, and then only getting reimbursed for 80% of what we expended. So it's a continuous, so if this project takes 5 years, yes, our match is gonna be spread out over 5 years, but it's gonna be hard to say each
How much
budget
is
cycle,
coming
if we're,
when,
yeah, how much is coming each year, how far the project's gonna go, how much we're purchasing each year, to really be able to accurately figure out a budget number. And then we're talking a significant increase to the taxpayers on their tax bill.
So this doesn't have room for in-kind contributions?
It's a 20% local match, it's not, I don't believe it's in kind, it has to be a cash match, I believe, is how this is. Greta can answer that more solidly than I can, but.
Yeah,
I would be concerned too if we apply, decide we don't kind of have our ducks in a row, don't accept the funds in the fall, and then try to apply again next year. Is that gonna hurt us if we don't accept the funds, but we do, once we're able to get, water, sewers, storm drain, everything aligned, will that hurt us if we apply and don't accept the funds this year?
I feel like now's not a good time to pull the trigger on this.
no, we were keeping our heads down in budget season because the tax rate was,
We have a new
Looking
bond
pretty
payment
aggressive.
next year, and a few other things that are gonna be in next year's as well.
yeah, given the amount of departments involved with this kind of a project, I think it's gonna be a much larger scale than just this, because, we're gonna get water, wastewater, and possibly the electric department on board as well, and they would all need to do their own engineering at the same time. So I personally don't think it would be a good idea to try to accept this to go shovel ready and complete within the next 5 years.
One thing I wondered about, do we have to do like the entire project? Could we just do the engineering and construction of maybe Depot Street, perhaps? Does it have to be the whole picture? Oh, Greta, hi.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming.
Come on in.
We have some questions for you already.
Okay.
That's
There's-
yours,
there's-
that's Sunny.
Greta, there's more chairs.
Actually, I would like to say something before you go there.
Hi.
Pretty obvious, I have a lot invested in this. My volunteer time, a lot of my volunteer time invested in this and working with people. And I would ask you to change the way you might look at it this way. And that is, there's been a long-term planning process where you've been assisted to get to a certain point to accomplish certain things in the village. The infrastructure under Main Street's not good, is that correct? Is that a fact, or?
The sewer isn't good because it's been redone in the 80s or 90s. But the storm drain, it says the old sewer,
Yeah.
which outlets down here by the old store down in the corner.
Yeah.
So you had to replace it all the way from there, all the way up to Jolly's. And the water line would basically have to start from here, all the way up to.
The water's clearly not good. The water line.
Clearly not, no, yeah.
So a way that you could think about it is that this is the opportunity to address all those things at once and come up with those, you know, people throw out, you know, well, if you do more at the same time, it gets less expensive, you know. That happens sometimes, but not every time. But you would have the opportunity to say to an engineering firm, bid this all for us. Do all of this work, rather than piecemeal it out. And then the other part is that once you have the streets up for one project, that has to defer the cost of the other project. If you decided, or found out you had to do the water lines in 3 or 4 years, these funds or this opportunity wouldn't exist. You know, I don't believe it would exist, possible, I suppose, but I don't think it was. We've had that, one more and then I'll stop. And the other part of this is that, as proven to us in Enisburg and into other communities, and as I talk to grant administrators and people who fold out the grants, is that money goes to those communities who deliver, who have, you know, who work through a plan and get there and say, okay, now we're ready. Those are the ones that end up with cash. The people who, a project company, communities who start and stutter or put it on the shelf, they don't come back, or it's very hard to get them back, whatever your credibility is, because they see where things happen. So there's some legitimate momentum for Enisburg to be involved in this and to not be in the bottom of the pile when money is being requested. And I also think the sale to other funds in the state, when you're taking a comprehensive approach, would hopefully get some notice. Thank you.
So I do agree with you that momentum goes a long way. But in this particular case, it seems to me that we're doing 2 steps in one.
I didn't hear you.
2 or 3.
We're doing 2 steps in one. The engineering, in my opinion, should be split. That way we can get everyone on board in all the different departments. And it seems like, you know, you're dangling the carrot here, like there's a lot of money, but you have to do it. And I'm just afraid of doing it and then ripping up Main Street 3 years later when we do all of the wastewater, all of the water, you know, stormwater, stuff like that. So I would like to get all of the departments on board and come up with a plan. Like, let's just call it a 5-year plan, because that's probably in the timeline of what they need to happen and what goals they need to accomplish during this big build, because it's all going to take place at the same time. Main Street's going to be up, probably closed, detoured, whatever. It's all going to happen at the same time. So we're going to need to talk to them as well. And would this grant or a grant of this nature cover department engineering or just the Vital Village aspect of it?
It would just cover the streetscape components that are included in the scoping study.
So we would also have to find other funding for electric, wastewater, water, all on their own separate terms.
Maybe, with this whole infrastructure funding from the government, there may be stuff coming out down the road, but I don't know when, you know, for, you know, Biden has all this infrastructure stuff coming up.
Yeah,
Greta, we had a question about the match. It's 20% match. Is that in some systems where it's like, if there's an invoice for 10,000, they would get reimbursed for like 8,000, or does it work in a different system?
Well, it depends on what if you're just gonna be providing cash match, that's what they would do, is just reimburse, 80% of every submission that you provide to the grantor. But if they don't necessarily encourage it, but you are able to provide, it is in-kind match is eligible in some cases, so if that was something that was approved for your project, there would be a plan for how to account for that.
what is the date that? 2 questions. Is the timeline for this grant when you spend the money or when it's completed, and what is that date?
The timeline for like the period of performance for the grant.
Yep.
From my understanding, there is not a hard end date, and so they give you sort of general guidelines, because I think that they understand that a lot of projects don't sort of operate on standard timelines. So the guideline I am getting from the granting agency is 3 to 5 years to do your engineering, and then you'll start construction. And sometimes the engineering can take longer. And that sometimes, that has happened in a few communities that I can think of in our region.
You get a sidewalk for 10 years.
And And so there's no penalty for it taking longer?
So long as you're still moving forward towards construction, right? Because that's the contingency with this grant, right? Is, you know, any funds you expend on the engineering and design side need to be paid back if you decide that you don't want to construct, right? And so there's a lot of federal transportation dollars that work that way.
So would it be feasible if this grant were applied for and approved for our community, if it took a couple months before even the engineering began to give the departments time to do that bigger plan?
If you decide to apply for June 9th, and you're awarded at the end of the summer, you know, I suppose you could delay the start of, you know, you're gonna have to go out and RFP, hire an engineer to do the design work. You know, you do have some time to organize plans between now and when you're actually gonna have an engineer on board, but, you know, I get it, you know, you're planning for a major project and there's a lot of factors to consider and you wanna be ready. So I don't, it depends on how quickly you can do that planning.
If we apply this June, get awarded the funds in the fall, how long do we have to initially accept or decline the funds? Because we could accept the funds in the fall, this doesn't get voted on for the match until March, and if our budgets get voted down because of this, I mean, what happens at that point in time?
I mean, when you sign the grant agreement, you need to commit to the match. I mean, you're committing to the match when you apply.
Right.
So does that require a vote from the public?
No.
We wouldn't be able to until we have our budget, because it's gonna affect the tax rate in our budget, so we don't essentially won't know until March if the public's gonna be on board with whatever the tax rate increases that's gonna include this project.
Right, it's enough of a match where it's
It's gonna be a
really
significant.
gonna rock the boat.
We have other things, like other bond payments and other things that are starting for next year too, that are, there's a lot of big dollar stuff hitting the budget next year.
Is this a grant that comes up every year?
Yes.
Do you think it would hurt us in any way, like say we don't apply for it this year and hold off until next year so we can kind of figure out all of the department side stuff on it,
Or
or?
get a new village manager?
Ducks row thing.
Yeah, ducks in a row.
I think that if you can show continued momentum and apply in a year, I can't see that the funders are going to dock you for that. But I'm not, you know, I don't make
Can't
your
really answer that
decisions, I don't
question.
really know how to answer that question.
But it doesn't feel like it has to be now or never opportunity. Now would be ideal in like the granting world, constructing the momentum of the project.
Yeah, I think there's other ways to keep the momentum going, if that's what feels good to the trustees. But I think that I think that it's important to keep this on, if you are going to be in this room a year from now, and this is gonna circle around again, and this is an intention of the village for this to circle around again and to continue this project and continue to implement it, then a year can fly by really fast. And there's, so I think that it would be helpful to really come up with a plan for all the things that need to be done and all the questions that you have, and financing questions, planning questions, design, engineering of all the different components questions, so that you feel ready.
Because if I'm understanding from the Zoom call that we were on the other day, the trustees have to pretty well have a final decision. Like I believe it was voted like alternative 2 with parts of number 3. They have to kind of have a solid, this is what we want done.
Correct. You would need, when you apply for this funding, you can't say, we might want to add some of the other alternatives, and I think I explained that in the guidance I gave you tonight. They want to see the definitive alternative that you want to pursue.
When did we, go on that
That was
finalizing?
in the fall, I wanna say
November maybe?
October,
October?
November.
So it's only been 6 months, and in the terms of the speed of government, that's, you know, it happened yesterday, basically, so I don't think that it would hurt us to take a little time just to get everything together, you know what I mean?
And I agree with Greta, keeping this kind of on the agenda and having the discussion to give you guys the time to really nail down the design that you wanna push forward and time to look into each department, what it's gonna cost. We can start going out for estimates for the engineering tomorrow if need be for all of these projects.
And we
So-
are moving forward, there was the transportation grant for the crosswalk
Yep,
by the school
Yeah.
on Dickinson, so that is an aspect of the overall Vital Village plan, so we are implementing it, but as much as we can bear, I guess, this time.
I mean, I definitely, yeah, I agree with all that, and I think that, like, you know, we've been without a village manager for a while, and I think that's kind of, we've been doing a lot of work without, a personnel, staff member. And some opportunity for some, more, continued public engagement as well. I think we've had people request that.
So, do we want to leave off by directing department heads to identify things that they would need to happen within the next 5 years, or major upgrades that would need to happen if Main Street is up?
I think that's
And
very
report back
important.
to us within 4 or 6 months with a list and,
As soon as possible.
It's probably gonna come up for budgets, I mean, we're gonna start talking about this summer anyway.
Right.
With
And we're gonna
budgets
start
starting.
budgets in September, correct?
We're gonna be starting much earlier than we have, so that's all gonna come to the forefront with everybody needs to put together their capital plans for the
So,
next few years, so.
a September deadline for,
Because we had the engineering for the water line from Orchard up to Water Tower, that was what, $740,000, and knowing that's gonna happen, that's another thing we have to think about too.
yeah,
There's a lot of projects in the works.
right.
What if you applied for this grant with a notation that its acceptance is dependent, stated somehow, is dependent on getting the other stuff done, that if you can do that in 5 or 6 months, by the time the grant's awarded, you'll have more of that, most of that done, and you can say, well, we need another 3 or 4 months to get everything locked down before we can start the project. Is that?
So my reservation with that is some of the other engineering could be really costly. Let's just, for example, if we wanted to
okay.
bury the power line,
Okay.
there's another $40,000 that, again, would impact the electric department's budget. So, or let's just say water, wastewater, you know, that's a $100,000 project or whatever. We're gonna have to also probably find some grant sources for those. So we're gonna have to try to seek out grants, fit in the rotation, apply, and get awarded all of those. So if we can kind of line up all of the aspects first and then go after the big one, then I'd be a lot more comfortable with that.
I don't think this year is the year to go for this.
Not a good year to build anything.
Kind of a good planning year to figure out everything, what everybody's needs are department-wise, get a general idea on the engineering side of stuff, but definitely not take this project at all off the table, but
We're
I
not
think
throwing
we
it in the
need,
trash.
no, I think we need a little more time to plan and have all the stars align essentially to be able, because this is gonna be a huge project, so that everything can come together when we have Main Street dug up. Let's maximize that time period and get everything done at once.
Another question, how's it affect all the businesses, we got the whole Main Street tore up and then.
Well, we survived before.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Because it's gonna be coming up to get repaved within the next 10 years, I would imagine.
We paved it in 2014,
So,
the state PCI there, it was 2014.
so yeah, it's coming out. Well, that's my thought. I don't know if the board agrees, but I think we should let department heads know that they've got to start thinking about stuff they need. Get back to us before budgets, start identifying some stuff, get some funding for engineering, and then move on.
Well, and make it clear that it has to be done.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be our priority, and that we have check-ins about it, about progress, maybe even monthly.
We can do, used to do them monthly department head meetings. It hasn't happened lately, but I can start getting that back on the rotation and having the discussions, and then I can assist in any way also for whatever their needs are, but I can get that back rolling again, started
Right, at
immediately.
least when the new manager starts.
Correct.
Right, because there was a time when there was a vital village committee that was meeting very regularly. COVID impacted a lot of stuff, and then we don't have a village manager right at the moment. But I think we just kind of need to kind of keep all of that going. And that'll should put us in a pretty good spot. So it's really like right in my eye.
We need to get blinds.
Yes, please. I was gonna mention
They're not in the
my own
budget.
business.
Budget season's coming
Gotta
up.
hire a lighting
Oh
engineer.
my gosh, this is really painful.
You can sit over here, Heather, we got this chair.
It keeps moving.
Here.
There's no seating chart here.
Anyway, yeah, it just like, yeah, we just need to keep the momentum, and I think like the more work that we do will kind of help out with the final application as it comes about as well. So I really wish that we were ready for this right now. I think that there's just a couple of factors this past year that's making this challenging.
Is there any merit to saying that a more well-developed application is more apt to be picked over, you know, a faster?
It's not. Yeah, I think that the pieces that, there are certain decision points that need to be made that affect the streetscape application, but the scoping study really essentially writes that application. The budget is there, I mean, and you're applying for engineering and design, right? So you don't have any of those pieces yet. You're applying for that funding to take the next step beyond scoping. So I think that, I mean, to be honest, I think you could put together, if you were able to make the decision on what exactly alternative you wanted to apply for, I think you could make a strong application, because I don't think that they're going to expect you, they would want to see, number one, they would want you to commit the match, and number two, they would want you to understand that you're planning for alternate components, but I don't know that they would be scoring your application on whether or not you are ready to go with the other project components right now. That might be a question to follow up with the granting agency. I don't know for sure, but I mean, I think that you could technically put together a very strong application this year. You will also be able to put together a strong application next year based on the scoping study and additional planning work relating to specific preferred alternative and aligning all of your projects.
Okay.
So the municipal project management, 15%, that would be the grant providing that sum for somebody from the village to oversee the project?
You would hire that out. A lot of times, it is something that's eligible for regional planning commissions to provide that service. But you need someone that's gonna manage the project. It can be a staff person, if you have that capacity. But it's gonna be a fair amount of time that traditionally, a village manager might not have that capacity to take on that project. But it could be a local staff person that does that, or a consultant that does project management as well, or the regional planning commission.
You know, I don't want to say it, but no, most history with our infrastructure is A&E, and Eldridge and Elliott. They've done most of our water for the last 10, 15 years. They're pretty knowledgeable at that. Probably the storms and sewer too. And I hate to say one company, but they've been involved in this village more than any engineering firm.
Yeah, Wayne knows everything there is to know about.
He works with the wastewater department every year, and their capital plan really helps us implement that.
They're very
Financially.
knowledgeable about our water system too.
Okay, does anybody else have any more questions? No? Well, thank you very much for coming in. Thanks for answering our
Thank you,
questions.
Greta.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay, up next we have Elm Street sidewalk discussion.
So, prior,
Before you get going, I'm just gonna recuse
Yep.
myself.
what about, does it affect Leonard at all? too?
I believe it does.
Because you're also a landowner along there.
Resident.
Yeah.
But there's a sidewalk.
The Elm Street sidewalk project would be right in front of your house, so you're a landowner.
It goes up to block.
I never turned in any paper, if that's what you mean.
No, I think we have to have you recuse yourself. for conflict
Oh,
of interest.
okay.
So, yeah,
So
so
you want me to walk out?
you can
We don't have to
sit
leave.
here, but you just can't
Just can't
comment.
vote or anything.
I just can't vote.
I will, okay.
This is a
I'll
project
leave this.
that's been put on the back burner the last couple of years. That the state has given us a deadline to this fall to make the decision if we are going to move forward with this project or if we're done with this project. I've done some digging through old emails and binders and stuff to see what I could find. The last thing I gathered is there's in particular a couple of parcels on Elm Street that are not in favor of giving the right of way, that there would be a lot more legwork that we would have to do there. One property in particular in debate is there's an oak tree that there's been a big debate about. I don't know if that rings any bells for anyone.
You mean when I said I'd chain myself to it, like the one in California?
So basically at this point in time, I mean, if this is,
You're not gonna have any board members in a minute.
so,
I like trees.
okay, the grant expiration date is December 15th, 2024, meaning that the entire project would need to be completed by then. So far, we have expensed just over $34,000 on this project in the engineering and kind of the work so far. If the trustees decide that we don't want to move forward, we are responsible for paying that $34,000 back. This is also another project that has the 20% in kind. Original estimates when we started this are, we were awarded $417,000 and our match is almost $105,000. So that's again another project for the next couple of years that would be spread out but also hit the tax rate. So we don't necessarily need to make a final decision this evening, but it is something that needs to get back on the radar of, are we gonna move forward? Are we not gonna move forward? And we can discuss a little bit more some of the particulars in executive if need be regarding a couple of the properties. But that's where that's at.
So, I, for one, am prepared to make a decision on this tonight. I like the idea of this project, but I've thought about it in every way that I can think. There is no easy way to get to the rec field. And it doesn't matter if there's a new sidewalk there or not. You're still crossing Main Street and Water Tower Road or Sampsonville Road. So, the state won't give us a light still at J-View. So that, again, kind of, I was waiting on that to see what the Tractor Supply, would do to that intersection to see if they would give us light. And that apparently is still a no from what I gathered last. So it's really not worth fighting with residents over a new sidewalk to get to the rec field, but you're still crossing Main Street, and still crossing the water.
There's still danger involved here.
Exactly, and there's a perfectly good sidewalk on the other side of the street, but there's no easy way to get to the rec field. So I don't think that we need to accept it. I don't think that we should do it. That's just me.
Did you have?
I was just gonna chime in from the tractor supply discussion from the DRB. The state is adamant that they will not give us a light up there, so.
We're gonna kill a few people first.
They
Well-
literally told us that we have not had enough deaths on that road at the intersection to have a proper light.
Fantastic. Is there any way that maybe we could adopt that section of highway from the state? Is that a thing? The state loves giving stuff away. I'm sure they'd give us that intersection. J-View Drive, Sampsonville intersection.
How the state doesn't want.
If we were to adopt, let's say, to the rec the rec center emergency services driveway, so that intersection then becomes ours, and we can do what we want with it. Would that be something that is in the cards?
Maybe worth conversation, worth at least going to.
Don't know if we don't ask.
I mean, I don't, starting with Jim, I guess, Coda, and going from seeing which way we've gotta go.
You know, I'm not
So-
supposed to say anything, but I have a question.
It is a different topic.
I just wanna know if the state would still control whether or not you can put a light up there or not.
That's what I was gonna ask,
Yeah,
if
if
we
you-
would be
even
allowed
if
to
we
just
own it.
choose to
Right,
do it on our
exactly.
own road, would
Because
we
it's
have that
technically
right?
still a state road through there, even though we own it, it's the
Right,
state
you-
highway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions to ask, and I think that it may be worth just starting a conversation. Because our ultimate goal is to get some sort of traffic.
Right.
And a safe route to get to those fields.
That intersection's terrible.
Well, the
I'm there
ridiculous
daily.
part of it was that Tractor Supply was willing to pay for the light and anything to do with it as part of the project, if that was a requirement from the DRB, but the state said no to them, that they weren't allowed to install one and they weren't allowed to pay for it, the state wouldn't let them have one. So I don't know if it'll actually matter.
So that kind of answers that question right there, even if we own the intersection, they're still gonna control if the light can go up or not.
Well, I don't think
Maybe.
not necessarily, just because they currently own it, so they're saying no.
Right. They don't own Main Street, we have some power on Main Street, it's our road.
We got Tractor Supply.
So there's probably one in my Tractor Supply.
So it would fall, I would assume, under the jurisdiction of our local traffic ordinances, which we set,
Yeah,
and we could put in our, we just revised it
Our own,
last year.
like,
Yeah, our own,
on our own
addendum
physical-
to our traffic ordinance that would include a stoplight style traffic pattern there, or you name it, roundabout, whatever we're putting in there.
So, Jesse, would it be you that would make that contact, that request, is that?
Yeah, I could start the conversation at least and get you some, like I said, I've been working with Jim and Kyle Carpenter from V-Trans on this, with Dave with the signs, so at least those guys would get us pointed in the right direction. I mean, completely unrelated, when I was sitting in your guys' seat years ago, when we had that debate about the light and whatnot, I mean, the state back then was pushing hard for not a light, but a roundabout. I was sitting right next to a state engineer one night, I don't remember what we were talking about, but he leaned over to me and he mentioned that, so.
So would the state pay for that if they own that?
The state doesn't like to pay for it.
No.
And when you get into,
Traffic light, if they like the idea of a roundabout, would they do that, like?
Right, when the conversation happened again with Tractor Supply, of course, I came late in the game on Tractor Supply, because there was talk about connecting Jigdu Drive back to
East Street, right?
East Street and through there, and then that kind of all got bagged. The state was kind of like, that's a different, whole separate issue. And talking with their engineer, the Tractor Supply's engineer, he had mentioned, roundabout again, is what he had brought up, so.
Well, let's ask,
Yeah.
if you'd be willing to do that, that'd be
That's an
great.
email. It's no big deal, I can do that, happy to.
That'd be a good conversation to start, I think.
Yeah, that's fine.
But okay, back to the Elm Street sidewalk, you're recused again.
And
You, sorry.
Recused. So in order, just to recap for me, please, so in order for the sidewalk to go through this project, we would need how many more property easement, agreements?
I don't know that answer 100%. One of the last email chains that I saw at the time was that we had 10 properties left, and I mean, it's gonna be like a going
Okay.
door to door type of thing. A couple of the properties that are left may be looking for monetary compensation in order to go along with this. We've got a couple businesses along there, and we've got a couple of residents that are not really 100% on board with this, or on board only if we do this in return. So there's a lot of further discussions that need to be had, and a lot of factors that are gonna come into play, where it's gonna be potentially 10 unique situations where one might want money, one wants, a tree dealt with, one wants this to happen, one wants that to happen, so it's gonna be a lot of back and forth to get that answer, but like the last email chain I found going through what I had was we had about 10 left at one point in time.
And if some miracle happened and we took the road and we had a light, and we had a light like the ones in St. Albans where there's a flashing light and an audible beep when it's time to cross the road, would that then maybe help with the situation of getting the kids across the road
In my opinion, that would change everything.
without the new sidewalk?
Because you would stop traffic and they would walk on the brand new sidewalk that goes past the chainsaw shop to McDonald's.
Right.
Across the street, and
Yep.
across the street, while traffic is stopped.
Mhm.
They're there and they're safe.
Yeah.
And that, that wouldn't,
Kind of a,
we wouldn't have to replace
yep, it would eliminate the rest of
500
that.
yards or 400 yards of sidewalk to the new accessibility 5 foot,
Yeah,
which is where
this
all of our
grant
easement.
is, I think 2,300 is the whole length of Elm, is what this was gonna replace. So this grant in particular that we had been awarded, I believe it was like 2,332 feet of
So we're putting down
sidewalk.
$500,000 for the sidewalk or using one we already got and just go across the intersection.
Well, if Jesse can
Yeah.
hop on that and we'll start there, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely think
So
that
let me know what
if
you need from me in those
if we-
conversations, if anything.
we don't move forward with the project, it needs to be a priority to find the safe crossing.
Oh, absolutely,
We've
but
been-
this might be the answer.
It might be, yeah, I'm just saying, like, if this isn't it, we need to be creative and find the other
Yep.
way, because we've really, there's already families going over there, like residents, non-residents, there's human beings crossing that street for need. And then the other one is, like, they're trying to build it up to get more people to go there,
Right.
so that's
Now-
a future need for it.
Do we own the section, I should know this, I'm sure, of the Water Tower Road from the corner to, say, your house?
It is a village street.
That's village, yeah.
So
So they plow it.
if the sidewalk was left the way it is now, I've been tripping over those tree roots for 100 years now, I haven't fallen down yet. And you went up that sidewalk, I realize you've got to cross in front of McDermott's and you've got to cross in front of your place. But if we could cross the road, have a light or a flashing beacon on the Water Tower Road and get those kids to cross that way, even if they, and I'm sure we would get their blessing to do it, they had to walk across the front lawn of the Community National Bank, and then get to the rec fields.
That's
Or
another
maybe then
idea.
we could avoid the whole,
Yep.
aching mess that way too.
And those are ideas, I think, reserved for after this.
Yeah, so there are some alternatives.
There are, but the way the state laid it out where we had to do their specific thing.
Yeah,
And I don't like the way that they did it.
Oh, so we didn't have the choice of the project.
Well, we did, their other option, I think, was going like behind the golf course and then like up the state garage. And then,
might as well go to Berkshire.
yeah, and then you're gonna have like this dimly lit kind of weird sidewalk that I'm not a fan of that either.
Between that big White House across from the chainsaw shop and then up around the back there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I wouldn't go up behind that big White House for love nor money.
so what I don't like
Yeah, that
is
was
the
weird.
result of, it's the best result of everyone thinking about the safest way to get there, and it's still not, in my opinion, worth the $500,000 headache. So I would be prepared to turn that down.
And how long do we'd have to return funds? Correct?
All the email correspondence I have said is this fall, so I think if we give them a solid answer, let's say end of August, September, I think we're okay. I can ask that specific question, but I know the fall was the absolute latest we had to decide if we were moving forward or not.
Do we want an answer tonight?
Do you want to wait, see what Jesse comes up with, and then maybe the next meeting or the first meeting in June, regroup, discuss this one more time, and then make that final decision?
I don't think that his answer is gonna
Okay.
factor into this sidewalk project.
That's your
so-
guys'
Because
call.
even if
I'm
there is,
gonna have a real concrete answer for you, because I have a feeling it's gonna be a pinball
So
situation.
dance around with it?
well, let's just say lightning strikes and there is all of a sudden a stoplight up there. It's not gonna change
The
our
sidewalk.
sidewalk
Okay,
project.
then that's your decision, if you guys want the three of you to vote tonight if we're gonna continue with the sidewalk project, or if we're not going to, and then I have to work out a payment plan with the state for the $34,000.
So you wanna, so from a budgeting standpoint, would you like to wait until August?
So why don't we wait and get some more information and
I'm not sure what
come back to it?
I'm not sure what the budget plan or the repayment plan will look like. I can ask those questions. So if the board, knowing you guys kind of have a decision, but if we could wait, give me another meeting or two to ask a few more questions about that, because it's either gonna impact this year or next year. Probably both would be my assumption.
I think we should give Abby a chance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as much as I'd like to shoot this down right now.
100% or 80%.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm curious if you have to give back 100% or 80%.
I think it's whatever they've reimbursed to us, which is
Oh, that makes sense.
34,000.
Yeah, okay.
It's like $34,007, I believe is what Peter sent me.
We'll pay him the $7.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it worked that way, Sandy.
Discussion tabled until further stability.
Did we, can I just circle back to number 6, did we have to make an actual vote? I know like the feeling that we all said, but we didn't actually vote on.
I don't think we need a vote, we would just need a vote to allow them to begin the grant process.
Okay,
I don't think we need a vote to shoot them down.
okay.
Okay. Staff report.
Okay. Historical Society update, Cindy spoke, and if I misspeak on anything, please chime in, Cindy. Contacted Mark Fitzgerald with V-Trans per the request at the joint meeting. They requested the hard copy of the deed, and they're gonna have their lawyers review everything, but they did not believe it would be an issue if the village decided to add the town to the deed. Their kind of stipulation would be just to make sure all of the same conditions that are in our current deed are also reflected in the quitclaim deed.
Like they can buy it back for $1.
Correct. And
Did you ask them about that?
Oh, yeah.
They didn't want it back?
Oh,
They said, thanks, we're trying to cut down.
exactly, I know, that would have been.
So at this point in time, if the trustees decide that they're comfortable with adding the town by doing a quitclaim deed, we would need to get a lawyer involved, obviously, for that. But at this point, I believe Cindy said we could just give our lawyer permission to communicate with the state and the town's lawyer, draft everything, obviously present it to you guys for final approval. If everybody's good, then this is gonna pretty much be a behind closed doors, lawyers doing most of it, so, at this point.
We don't dare say simple.
Right.
No.
Right.
Well, they
In a
have their,
perfect world.
they have their conditions and we agreed to them,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
So at
As
this
long as everything's met, then yeah, I
I
don't,
think this is fine.
point, so does that mean I have the board's permission? Do you wanna use Jesse?
yes.
Okay, I will reach out to Jesse to give him permission to communicate, and I'll loop you in on that, Cindy, and then to reach out to the town and get that ball rolling with that, so.
Perfect.
Did you reach out so we can discuss it next Monday,
What's next
the
Monday?
town?
I will reach out tomorrow.
The select board, just so,
I think you just would need to give them like an update, like a small report, because I don't think anything's gonna happen between now and then, right?
Probably not,
no, I just didn't know
but I will reach out to
It was
Jess.
on the
I'll reach out
agenda
to our
for the-
attorney tomorrow and get the ball rolling with that as soon as possible for you. Highway Department dump truck update. With everything else in the world, the cost of our dump truck is going up. We didn't notice the January surcharge because we signed the paperwork after that, so that was already included in our initial price. But we, as I included, just got hit with a $3,800 surcharge. We're good now until the end of this month, and then they could hit us with another one. So we're still well under budget, but I don't know how many between now and fingers crossed this fall if we get our truck then, how many more we're going to have. Obviously, we have no control over that. Just wanted to kind of make you guys aware, and we'll keep updating you if we get hit with another one, and then have to make some decisions there if need be. But we're still well enough under budget that from the financial standpoint, this $3,800 isn't a deal breaker or the end of the world, but if they're gonna hit us with one every month, then obviously that changes the scope
Yeah.
a little bit.
Slightly different story.
But another one of those, I'm sure it's not the last one, but hopefully there's not too many more. Digger truck. I did my best with Ludlow, but the lowest they will go is $62,000. So at this point, I would recommend that we got our RFP out there for a new truck and start the process. At this point, even if we get 3 bids, you can refuse all bids or not accept any of the bids, and if we find a used truck in the meantime. But I'm concerned if we continue to wait on getting the RFP for a new truck any longer, that the prices are just gonna continue to go. We have the RFP drafted. I can get it posted by the end of the week and give like a June 1st deadline, and then in June we can.
How many surcharges are we gonna get on that by the time we place the order to
That's the other
delivery?
thing, we're getting hit with that, so, or the board has the option to talk. I don't know if Ludlow's advertised it anywhere after that.
They're not getting that for trade-in, I can almost guarantee that.
Oh,
So-
absolutely not. If they get 30 for trade-in, I would be surprised.
It's a bit of a specialized piece of equipment.
But with that, he's essentially are kind of sitting on a gold mine because you can't get used ones
Yeah.
right now. So if somebody's desperate for one,
And has the money.
They're in the situation too where they don't really have to sell it, they just can't park it inside.
correct,
And so they don't need to worry about parking it for
right.
Well, I'll get back to them in a couple weeks, see if they change their mind.
Because I was authorized to go and it was an immediate no.
Well,
So I started low, I'm pretty sure he laughed at me, and then went to what the trustees voted, and
but if nobody's
They were not
banging down
buying
his door, he could possibly change his mind.
correct. So is the board comfortable though if we get the RFP out, knowing that we don't have to accept any of the bids that come in, but I think we need to kind of keep both doors open at the moment. Okay, I will
That's fair.
coordinate with, I'm meeting with Dave tomorrow afternoon, so we'll finalize that one more time. Finance director training, I did reach out to Sam, I signed up for 2 trainings. One is actually tomorrow, it's regarding just open meeting laws and leagues of cities and towns is putting that one on. And then starting in June, it's gonna be a 2-part grant writing course through VTC. So it'll be Wednesdays and Fridays, and it'll start in June and go through September. So just in time for budget season and grants to open up, so. A couple things that have also come up since I drafted this, for a quick FERC update. We had until today to respond to a February 9th letter from FERC that pointed out some deficiencies and we needed to redo some work, update some drawings. It was down to the wire, unfortunately, which I was hoping we could prevent. One of our engineering firms that we were working with was on the ball, then all of a sudden got really far behind, and I got a call from Paul Nolan middle of last week saying, I don't know that we're gonna have everything done. And at that point, I kind of directed him, if you need to get someone else involved, get someone else involved. I'm not accepting this not going to the deadline, because that jeopardizes our license at that point in time. He did reach out to the Turner Group, because they're very familiar and have done a lot of work in the past. Stepped in, helped the engineering firm that we've been using. They pulled it off this weekend. They worked all weekend and got the drawings up to date. They had to fix one thing today, and we were able to successfully file the response, which made me feel a lot better. In the February 9th letter, our license was in jeopardy because we were supposed to have all this done in November. So that's all done now. It's kind of a waiting game to see what the response is gonna be. We are gonna be looking at some costs of potentially divers to look at the tail race and inspect the dam. I know we have to get the trash rack inspected this year, which we did budget for.
The tail race that needs to be dredged, super bad.
That's another conversation. We're gonna be having budget time. I've got a list. You guys aren't gonna like me in
Swimming
the
through
electric
mud.
department.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where that's at. So we at least met the deadline. I'll let you know when we hear back and what they're gonna request. We have the advantage of having, with the Kendall, it's the run of river, which is what the state's really pushing for dams. Swanton, we're filing at the same time, is going through a lot right now because they have the ponding method, which we have for Village 1. And the state wants the run of river, so you're not really changing the flow of the river. So they're going through a lot more hoops, so we kind of have that advantage a little bit here, so we might not have to go through as much as what they're going through. we have a little bit more on the historical side that we have to be careful of and see what requests that they're looking for, but I'm hopeful we'll stay in a few years of this, but who knows. They're also, just so you're aware, FERC it's looking to implement something that if you have a license, that financially you have to show that you can maintain all aspects. There's been issues of, I forget what state it was, a dam essentially failed and flooded a couple towns, and it was huge dollars of damage. So now some people are pushing to have this. There's a lot of resistance to it, but they're also gaining a lot of momentum with this, so now they might make it as a requirement that you have to be able to financially show when your license is up for renewal, or if you're applying for a new license, that you can financially maintain the infrastructure over the long term. So to be continued on that. Another quick update, the hydros. I do have a contractor coming Friday with Efficiency Vermont to kind of go through the building about the insulation. Gonna have a discussion with them on the windows. I know Efficiency Vermont is trying to steer me away from the windows because of the historical aspect. It's kind of one of those where Village 1 needs the insulation, the Kendall needs the windows bad. Some of those are the original windows, and I mean, you just touch the wood and...
Friday's a good day to have Efficiency Vermont there to show them how good our insulation is going to be when it's
We've already got
90
windows
degrees.
and fans going in there. That's already been an issue, the heat, and it will continue to be this week. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that goes. He was initially concerned, thinking it's going to be too big of a project and that we'd only be able to get one company in here. I disagree. I don't think they realize we're just looking at the ceiling, because it's 14-inch thick brick wall all the way around. So I'll have hopefully an update and some dollar figures on that project here soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Abby. Up next, other business.
It was kind of mentioned earlier jokingly, but is it possible that we can get blinds?
Yes, I will look into blinds.
Go to Ace and just get some pull shades.
Yeah.
They cost about,
Hey, 70% comes out of my
$12 a
light
piece.
department, and I am like checkbook closed on that one right now. No.
I mean, we don't, literally, we
It's
don't
literally
need
these
some
two windows.
fancy pleated $100 a piece
I'll
window
measure 'em and
treatments.
maybe send
Put a
Gary
damn
over
shade
if I
up.
trust
Yeah,
him to
we
get
can
the right
take care of that, I'm
measurements.
sure.
Yeah. No, I opened the windows earlier hoping it would help, but it was 77 when we came in here, so I can only imagine with everybody being in here what it was, so.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable.
81.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a little breeze over here, so that's the only reason I'm not
Yeah, the
complaining
breeze-
with the fan tonight.
It just helped a little bit, but just like staring into the sun, and I feel like I got a sunburn.
You can't see you at all in the video.
I noticed that. I was looking at it just like big
But
ball.
yes, I will get blinds for those two especially.
Any other business?
I just have one comment. I don't know if you guys have been down Depot Street,
Oh, they look
Legion.
awesome.
They're
Yes.
fantastic.
Those are, and I would just say, and I know it's not your guys' baby, it's the Legion's baby, but if they come back to you and ask you guys for more poles, I would just suggest, I think that would be awesome if you saw all of Main Street, with.
They were
those
talking
there.
of going up Pleasant Street next, if
Right,
they get
right.
another request.
I think,
But
yeah,
they
if they
look
do,
awesome.
if they do in steps, it reminds, Plattsburgh has those, the same thing
Yeah,
there. I
but
think.
they're part of the national program. I don't
Right.
think this, our Legion is.
Right, but it just, when I came down through, I was like, oh, that's cool, that's,
Doesn't
that's
really-
really.
But Elm and Pleasant are kind of neglected.
Right.
Enisburg, Main Street has the flags, and
Yeah,
Pleasant Street really doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
And Elm Street doesn't
Because I
have too
think
much of
our
anything
flags
either.
run
so-
up Elm
Or
a
part of
little
the way.
bit, but
They
They
not.
actually-
go around the corner.
on Depot, they
Right.
put the flags and the banners,
Yeah.
which is kinda cool looking too,
Yep,
it's nice
it
that
looks
way,
really nice.
so. And I know today it was just talked about that there's people who are, willing to donate the money, not necessarily nominating somebody specifically, people wanna just give the Legion the money, or if somebody walks through the door, maybe they can't afford it or something.
That's great.
So I think you're gonna see it blow up pretty
Yeah.
exponentially, so,
Yeah, because they're gonna do I believe a 6-month rotation was what was last discussed.
yeah.
So kind of spring and fall to rotate
Rotate.
who's up on the poles. Yep, but no, it looks fantastic.
Mhm. sure. Okay, anything?
I had one more thing. I was just wondering about name tags in front of us when we're sitting. Could be paper ones. It doesn't have to be super.
Do them on a computer, I'll laminate them.
Yeah, like something like. But I was just thinking like personability wise, like people come in and they don't know who we are, right? So just our names and if we're staff or not. I just thought that it might be
And if you
nice
wanted
for-
to do them, Abby, I really will laminate them. You don't have to pay to have them laminated, I have a laminator.
Okay. That could be a fun project for Psyche, she's really crafty.
And I'm cheap.
You think just something like set on the table?
I don't
or-
like spending.
Yeah, so like,
You can take a
something,
piece of paper and just kind of do a V and have the name just so it'll sit.
yeah, something nicer than just like computer paper, but, I'm not talking about like, permanent plaques that you'd get in your office that's like made of steel or something, but,
They're pretty pricey these days.
yeah. But, just something that, like little sort of TP sort of thing, Heather Moore trustee.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with that.
I can make that happen. Cool. Psyche's always up for a fun project.
Perfect. Okay, is there anything else before we head into executive?
These guys are for the executive, because it was supposed to be the executive from the joint meeting,
Right.
just so you have it.
Yes, okay. So, hearing no other business, I will entertain a motion to head into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations in which premature public knowledge may compromise the position of the municipality and for a personnel issue.
I move we go into executive
A
session.
second.
I'll second.
Sandy with the first, Heather with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Alright, that's unanimous.
And we have 10 seconds.